the full script here, so to put it very plainly. So I will reserve the opportunities to ask for these consents and wait for one of our colleagues to appear on the floor.
Objection.
And I yield the floor at this time.
The clerk will call the roll.
Ms. Baldwin.
Senator from New Jersey.
As of the quorum, call be vitiated.
Without objection.
Madam President, pursuant to the comments I was just making a few minutes ago, let me move directly to my request. I ask unanimous consent that the Senate proceed to the consideration of calendar number 335, Donald Liu, to be Assistant Secretary of State for South Asian Affairs, and that the Senate vote on the nomination without intervening action or debate.
Is there objection?
Madam President,
Senator from Texas.
reserving the right to object, I want to make a few remarks on Senator Menendez's request for unanimous consent on the nomination of Donald Liu to be Assistant Secretary of State for the Bureau of South and Central Asian Affairs, and also on the nomination of Brett Holmgren to be the Assistant Secretary of State for Intelligence and Research. The reality is that had these nominees been confirmed in August, they would have done nothing to stop the administration's disastrous withdrawal from Afghanistan. President Biden bears responsibility for the catastrophe that has unfolded in Afghanistan. President Biden repeatedly ignored reasonable advice and the intelligence on what was happening on the ground in the run-up to the disastrous withdrawal. He abandoned the Bagram airfield well before August, setting the stage for the chaos at the Kabul airport. He wasn't even listening to his staff on what needed to be done on Afghanistan. Instead, he imposed an arbitrary deadline for political purposes with disastrous results. I'm not going to object to consent on this individual, Mr. Liu, and on Mr. Holmgren in a moment that Senator Menendez will ask for. But let's be clear. The administration is trying to play a blame game to deflect blame for their absolute failure to conduct a reasonable and rational drawdown, to deflect blame for President Biden's decision to abandon Bagram to the Taliban, to deflect blame for President Biden's indefensible decision to give the Taliban a list of names of Americans and Afghans who are now very much in harm's way and in jeopardy because of the foolishness and the manifest incompetence of this administration. None of the nominees I have holds on would have made one difference in what happened in Afghanistan. And it's difficult to believe that even my Democratic colleagues believe, political talking points notwithstanding, how, for instance, the Assistant Secretary for Educational and Cultural Affairs could have stopped President Biden from gift-wrapping Bagram airfield and giving it to the Taliban. It's also important to provide a little bit of background on why these holds are in place in the first place. President Biden is not following the law. He's refusing to follow the law which mandates the imposition of sanctions on Nord Stream 2. Those sanctions had succeeded, had halted Nord Stream 2 in its place, and President Biden transformed an incredible foreign policy victory into an incredible foreign policy defeat. When President Biden came into office, he willfully and brazenly disregarded the law, and he allowed Nord Stream 2 to continue on its road to completion, which was in effect a multi-billion-dollar gift of Vladimir Putin at the expense of Europe's security and at the expense of American national security. However, there is still time to stop Nord Stream 2 if we act quickly. A pipeline that isn't 100% complete is effectively 0% complete. And I'm not going to stop working to halt Nord Stream 2, to stop Russia, and to prevent Vladimir Putin from economically blackmailing our European allies and threatening American jobs. These consents, and more broadly, what the administration is engaged in, is a blame game trying to distract blame from their own actions. But it's worth noting that I have offered to lift my holds from the beginning. And indeed, over a month ago, I extended the offer to Treasury Secretary Yellen, to the National Security Advisor in the White House, and to Senator Menendez, that I would lift these holds, lift the holds on Treasury nominees and lift the holds on State Department career nominees, if the administration either imposed sanctions under CAATSA, the Countering American Adversaries Through Sanctions Act, or if they waived those sanctions in such a way that it would trigger Congress having an override vote. On August 5th, I extended that offer directly to Secretary Yellen. Unfortunately, the administration hasn't acted on it. They have decided that their policy of gift wrapping a multi-billion-dollar pipeline for Vladimir Putin and Russia was so important that they wanted to deny Congress even a vote on it. Under CAATSA, CAATSA was passed for precisely these circumstances, for an administration that refused to follow U.S. law, and refuse to comply with tough sanctions on Russia. That's what the advocates of CAATSA argued. This is a mechanism to force an administration to obey U.S. law and stand up to Russia. Now, at the time, the Democrats believed they were speaking about the Trump administration. But the principles behind CAATSA apply equally to Joe Biden's defying the law and giving this gift of Vladimir Putin at the expense of U.S. national security interests. This administration has had a path for months to clear these nominees. It has declined to exercise that path. That path remains before it. Nonetheless, because this nominee and the next one are directly relevant to cleaning up the mess that the Biden administration has made in Afghanistan, I do not object.
Is there objection?
Is there objection?
Without objection.
Without objection.
Clerk will report the nomination.
The clerk will report the nomination.
Nomination, Department of State, Donald Liu of California, to be an Assistant Secretary for South Asian Affairs.
Question is on the nomination.
The question is on the nomination.
All in favor say aye.
All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, no.
The ayes appear to have it.
The ayes appear to have it. The ayes do have it.
Nomination is agreed to.
The nomination is agreed to.
Madam President,
Senator from New Jersey.
I ask consent of the motion to reconsider be considered made and laid upon the table, all without intervening action or debate, that no further motions be in order to the nomination, that any statements related to the nomination be printed in the record, that the President be immediately notified of the Senate's action.
Is there objection? Without objection.
Madam President,
Senator from New Jersey.
I clearly don't share my colleague from Texas's views, but for the sake of the Senate's work, I will reserve responding to it at another time. I ask unanimous consent that the Senate proceed to the consideration of calendar number 150, Brett M. Holmgren, to be an Assistant Secretary of State for Intelligence and Research, and that the Senate vote on the nomination without intervening action or debate.
Is there objection?
Madam President,
Senator from Texas.
reserving the right to object for the same reasons I just articulated, that this position, as with the previous one, is directly related to trying to clean up the mess, the disaster the Biden administration has created in Afghanistan. I intend not to object to this nomination. The remaining holds remain in place, and the administration can lift the Treasury holds and the career state holds anytime they want by following the law under CAATSA and either imposing sanctions, or if they don't want to impose sanctions on Russia, triggering a vote in Congress so that this body can decide whether or not sanctions should be imposed on Russia. The administration has had that option in front of it for many weeks. It still has that option. I do not object.
Are there any further objection?
Without objection, so ordered.
Without objection, so ordered.
Questions on the nomination.
The question is on the nomination. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, no. The ayes appear to have it. The ayes do have it. The nomination is confirmed.
Madam President,
Senator from New Jersey.
I ask consent that the motion to reconsider be considered made and laid upon the table, all without intervening action or debate, that no further motions be in order to the nomination, that any statements related to the nomination be printed in the record, that the President be immediately notified of the Senate's actions.
Is there objection? Without objection.
Madam President,
Senator from New Jersey.
I ask unanimous consent that the Senate proceed to the consideration of calendar number 322, Brian A. Nichols, to be an Assistant Secretary of State for the Western Hemisphere, and that the Senate vote on the nomination without intervening action or debate.
Is there objection?
Madam President,
Senator from Texas.
reserving the right to object, I lifted my hold on this nominee a number of weeks ago, and for that reason, I do not object.
Without objection, so ordered.
Clerk will report.
Clerk will report.
Nomination, Department of State, Brian A. Nichols of Rhode Island, to be an Assistant Secretary of State.
Questions on the nomination.
The question is on the nomination.
All in favor say aye.
All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, no. The ayes appear to have it. The ayes do have it. The nomination is confirmed.
Madam President,
Senator from New Jersey.
I ask consent that the motion to reconsider be considered made and laid upon the table, all without intervening action or debate, that no further motions be in order to the nomination, that any statements related to the nomination be printed in the record, that the President be immediately notified of the Senate's actions.
Without objection.
Madam President,
Senator from New Jersey.
I ask unanimous consent the Senate proceed to the consideration of calendar number 323, Marcela Escobari, to be an assistant administrator of the United States Agency for International Development, and that the Senate vote on the nomination without intervening action or debate.
Is there objection?
Madam President,
Senator from Texas.
reserving the right to object. As I described minutes ago, the Biden administration is in outright defiance of federal law. An overwhelming bipartisan majority in the Senate and the House have passed tough sanctions on Russia, sanctions that work, sanctions that shut down the Nord Stream 2 pipeline for a year. But when President Biden came into office, he chose to override federal law, instead to give a multi-billion-dollar gift to Vladimir Putin and Russia. That decision is a generational geopolitical mistake. It harms U.S. national security interests, it benefits Russia, and it hurts Europe. Moreover, my holds on these nominations I have expressed to the administration in writing and orally over a month ago. They have a path to lifting the holds on the Treasury Department nominees and the career State Department nominees simply by either enforcing sanctions under CAATSA on Russia or overriding those sanctions and triggering a vote in this body where members of this body can register our views on whether Joe Biden is correct in giving this multi-billion-dollar gift to Vladimir Putin that undermines our national security. Accordingly, I object.
Objection is heard.
Madam President.
Senator from New Jersey.
Madam President, it's unfortunate that this last nominee is objected to. This particular position, when we're talking about Haiti, we're talking about having an assistant administrator that can help us restore the tragic situation in Haiti to a place in which people can live and won't seek migration to the United States. When we talk about what's happening in the Western Hemisphere, in Venezuela, where there is a huge humanitarian set of refugees leaving, when we talk about what's happening in Cuba with reference to the movements for democracy, this particular position would be dealing with all of that. And I must say, I know that my colleague wants to say none of this would have changed anything. That's not the case. I'm not saying that the ultimate result in Afghanistan would have changed. But certainly, when we do not have people in key positions advocating for the United States national security and policy, it exacerbates the set of circumstances because we don't have the wherewithal to do what is necessary. And there are many other key positions I'll be coming to the Senate floor and highlighting how that has a risk to national security. Finally, I would just simply say, CAATSA was violated by President Trump when he exercised no sanctions on the same issue that my colleague is concerned about. I happen to agree with him on the issue. I disagree with him in the process in which he's pursuing it. But that started with President Trump. And by the way, President Trump started with a surrender agreement to the Taliban. He gave them everything, got nothing in return, let them have 5,000 prisoners, Taliban prisoners that were returned to the Taliban that added to the fighting force. Got none of the commitments that were necessary to deal with a negotiation or a peace deal with the Afghan government. Got nothing at all except a total surrender, and then dramatically reduced the troop levels at that time. So there's a lot to talk about Afghanistan, not only in the immediate context, but over what's happened over the last 20 years. The Senate Foreign Relations Committee intends to do that extensive review through a series of hearings. But let's put history exactly where it belongs, in the right context. I yield the floor.
The clerk will report the motion to invoke cloture.